Hello Metroid fans, one and all. This video is a discussion on which ring in the Green Lantern lore Samus Aran would be most qualified for. So without further ado, let us begin. Now, this video is, I'll admit, useless. I mean, these things don't exist in the same universe, but it's still an interesting idea to think about if they did. Samus is a very interesting character, full of various emotions that often conflict with each other. Before we consider which ring in the emotion spectrum for which she best qualifies, let me just review each of the rings themselves. Since we are discussing which ring Samus is most likely to have based on emotion, I will not be discussing either the White Lantern or Black Lantern rings, just red through violet. The first one, red as I understand it, is fueled by and consumes its user with hate and rage. The second, orange, is a parasitic lantern that steals identity and abilities from those that encounter it, being fueled by avarice and greed. This ring, however, does not exactly seek those with greedy emotions, but embeds such emotions in them. The third, yellow, is fueled by fear in both the user and the user's prey, and specializes in instilling fear in others by projecting light constructs of their greatest fears. For example, radioactivity. The fourth, green, is fueled by willpower and looks for those who not only exhibit strong-willed emotions but also lack fear. The fifth, blue, is fueled by hope and can only achieve its full potential when with a green ring. It can also undo the power of the red ring and the yellow ring, and power boosts green rings. Number 6, the indigo ring, is another parasitic ring fueled by compassion, which was originally purposed to select convicts and criminals as its users for redemptive purposes, loading its users with strong compassion. It also brainwashes its unwilling users to join the Corps, but has no such effect on those already willing. Last is the violet ring, fueled by love, or should I say lust and desire, which can imprison individuals until they feel the power of love under the violet light. They also bind hearts together of those whose love is waning. And that is not violet. Now, being roughly educated, let's go back to Samus and what parts of the emotion spectrum she displays the most. At a glance, I'd say we could easily rule out her being the candidate of an orange, blue, or violet ring, though I'm sure plenty of people would like to see Samus among the Violet Lantern Corps. Perverts. Even if you go by some comic depictions of Samus's character as being money-hungry, that still doesn't qualify her for an orange, since the orange rings don't necessarily look for that quality. Which I guess technically means she could get chosen by one anyway, but let's just not, okay? Let's go back to red. This stands out as being rather likely, I think, since Samus has had multiple displays of rage and also has lived a long life of revenge. Consider her conflict with Ridley and showing the space pirates who's boss, the likelihood that she felt compelled to vanquish the Metroid Prime for causing the tragic fate of the Chozo on Talon 4, the likelihood in wanting to punish the Ing for killing the Federation Marines, and her enraged vengeance of the infant Metroid against Mother Brain. And let's not forget that beautiful piece of subtlety in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption in which Samus clenches her fist, signifying that she is angry at Dark Samus. However, it may not be the most prominent characteristic of Samus, and it would be a tragic thing indeed if Samus was selected as a Red Lantern ring user, considering it turns its users into rage monsters that destroy absolutely everything. It would be very difficult indeed to view Samus as a hero from then on. The Yellow Lantern Corps is also very likely, since Samus is very good at instilling fears into the hearts of countless space pirates, not to mention Samus herself is not altogether fearless. She has her share of being afraid and being in many unnerving situations. Consider her conflict with Dark Samus and even the Ing, or her conflict with the SAX. Remember, being brave has nothing to do with having no fear at all. This too, however, I think would be tragic if Samus was chosen to be a Yellow Lantern ring user, since it is all about living in, by, and instilling fear. Nothing really good. Just think about Parallax, the fear monster, and there's nothing about him or it that is appealing. But Metroid's theme of fear is still so incredibly prominent that I would say the Yellow Lantern ring may be more likely than the Red Lantern. Next, we have the Green Lantern ring, fueled by sheer willpower. Again, Samus is a very likely candidate for the green ring, seeing that she is an extremely independent individual who only really goes along with the Federation's judgment as long as it lines up with her own. She doesn't always follow orders, like in Metroid 2 when she spares the very last Metroid when she was supposed to kill all of them, or in Metroid Fusion when she recognized that the Federation is being a bunch of morons and decides to disregard protocol and her own orders for the sake of saving the universe. She's no bandwagoner. It's the reason she's a bounty hunter in the first place. Speaking of the bandwagon effect, she also shows her sheer willpower in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, seeing that she refuses to succumb to the darkness and the Phazon corruption like the other hunters and comes out truly victorious in the end. While she may have some fear in her, she doesn't allow it to consume her, which was why there was such a real distortion of her character in Metroid Other M. Samus has nothing but fear in that game. After blue comes indigo, fueled by compassion. Now this ring, like orange, actually doesn't necessarily look for compassion in a person but still takes those who do. And Samus has actually been known for displaying compassion. Specific instances include when she spared the confused infant Metroid that thought she was its mother, when she evidently mourns the loss of the Chozo on Tallon 4 in Prime 1, when she shows compassion for the fallen Marines as well as agreeing to fight for the Luminoth in Prime 2, the instance where Samus seems to show compassion toward Dark Samus before she appears to throw herself to her own death, when she mourns for the fallen hunters in Prime 3, and I can't believe I'm actually listing this, but there is also the time she expresses sympathy for MB and Other M, if that even counts. However, despite these instances where Samus shows just how much heart she really has, they really only serve as great character development and are not necessarily her most prominent traits. Still, it is a very noticeable trait given the presence of rage and hatred as well. So that means our top 4 for Samus are red, yellow, green, and indigo, and that's funny since those are the colors of her power suit, indigo being pretty much the color of her arm cannon. Each one of these rings' emotions, rage, fear, willpower, and compassion, is very prominent in Samus, both willpower and at least Samus' ability to instill fear in others being probably more dominant than rage and compassion. The thing about fear, though, is that it is not friends with willpower and feelings mutual. So the ring from one or the other might see the conflicting emotions and decide she wasn't fit for it, which means that the red and indigo lantern rings, the two least likely of the 4, are left as the only options left, seeing that the rings similar to orange seem to override the other emotions. On the one hand, the red ring is probably more likely than indigo, and yet the presence of strong compassion contradicts rage and may disqualify her for the ring of rage and vice versa. Thus, if Samus had a ring among these 4, and if we want to see further which of them is the most likely ring for Samus, we should look at the oaths for each core and determine which best describes Samus in that way. Let's start with red.
With blood and rage of crimson red, ripped from a corpse so freshly dead, together with our hellish hate, we'll burn you all. That is your fate.
I think this describes the character of the Space Pirates or Ridley more than anyone else and not Samus. Samus does have rage and hatred, but it's not nearly as intense as this oath states. Perhaps in instances like letting Mother Brain have it in Super Metroid or fighting Ridley would be instances where Samus would be most likely to receive a Red Lantern ring, but only in those instances. Next, let's look at yellow.
In blackest day, in brightest night, beware your fears made into light. Let those who try to stop what's right burn like his power, Sinestro's might.
Well, I think this one definitely seems more likely than the former. Samus has a knack for instilling fear in the hearts of her enemies, and the oath itself apparently claims to fight for what's right, which is, of course, dependent on what the user calls right, so that still leaves plenty of room for pretty sketchy attitudes towards life. Plus, Samus tends to run into rather frightening situations and every so often encounters a foe who does actually terrify her. Fear draws strength from fear, so it follows that the person who frightens people the most may be the most frightened person. On the other hand, Samus doesn't draw strength from fear necessarily. So, let's look at where she does draw her strength from. in brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light. I'd say this is the one that best describes Samus's character. She demonstrates the power to resist not only the bandwagon effect, but also perseveres in her crusade against evil regardless. She does feel fear, and she does often run into situations where she has more than enough reason to be afraid. However, she doesn't allow herself to be overcome by her fear. She masters her emotions and focuses on the task at hand, not on her feelings. She makes the best decisions with a sound mind and not with one clouded by unchecked emotion. Not to mention the Green Lantern Oath itself is more individualistic and not collectivistic like the Red Lantern Oath. But just so that I'm fair, let's look at the oath for the Indigo Lantern Corps. Never mind. So, time to vote. Congratulations, Samus. You're a Green Lantern. What a relief, too. Those other two, red and yellow, were pretty sketchy. About time you've gotten a green suit. So that's my analysis of Samus and the Emotion Spectrum Rings. What do you think? Did you agree with my conclusion? Thanks for watching. Don't forget to leave a like and/or a comment and subscribe. See you next mission.
In brightest day, in blackest night, no evil shall escape my sight. Let those who worship evil's might beware my power, Green Lantern's light.